Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Part 250 based on novel. So let's start. Hui Yuhao was floating in mid-air as he waited for Liao Menkai's arrival. This person did not unleash his martial soul. This was something Hui Yuhao had accurately determined. Normally, even soul engineers would first unleash their martial souls in battle to either strengthen or support their attacks. At the end of the day, any kind of boost would be better than nothing. Hui Yuhao had only seen one other person who relied purely on his soul power and soul tool. That person was none other than Ji Juechen. However, Hui Yuhao was able to tell that this person was treading on a different path from Ji Juechen. If he was planning to attack in a similar way as Ji Juechen, he would not have his human-shaped soul tool. His blades would have sufficed. The light from his matte black blades intersected each other in the air as they formed a cross that sped towards Hui Yuhao. The sharpness of his blades gave off the impression that the cross would be unstoppable. Hui Yuhao raised the morning dew dagger in his hand as the blade of the dagger instantly released an icy blue glow. The glow stabbed right into the center of the cross. The matte black light from the blades paused before turning white. Following which, they disintegrated into the air like the morning mist. Liao Menkai's heart sank after watching this. It was one thing to spectate Hui Yuhao's battle with the 5 evil soul masters, and another thing to be up against him in person. Liao Menkai could not seem to sense any pressure from Hui Yuhao's body. It was almost as though he did not have any aura at all. However, this only served to put more pressure on Liao Menkai. After all, he had seen how Hui Yuhao had taken down 5 transcendent duel consecutively with his own eyes. The thought of going up against someone like Hui Yuhao crushed his morale as his battle intent weakened. After the first probing collision ended, Liao Menkai appeared before Hui Yuhao at the very next moment. He had positioned one of his blades to the front and the other to his back as he slashed both of them towards Hui Yuhao. Soul engineers rarely used their martial soul true body, as it would affect the effects of their soul tools. However, it was even more rare to see people like him, who did not even unleash his own martial soul. The sharp light from his blades was easily parried by Hui Yuhao's morning dew dagger. At the same time, Hui Yuhao lifted his land hand as a streak of dark blue sword light came towards Liao Menkai. Unparalleled chill, Emperor's sword. Liao Menkai was the only person who could sense the chill that was traveling down his spine. Hui Yuhao had long been able to concentrate his ultimate ice after understanding the intricacies of the element of ice. Liao Menkai's figure flickered as his entire body became a little illusory. Poof! A soft sound could be heard as the unparalleled chill turned the black figure into an ice sculpture before the sculpture started to fall from the sky. However, another black figure had appeared on the other side of Hui Yuhao as it surged towards him with its brightly illuminated blade. Hui Yuhao moved his body and teleported away instantly. However, the black figure also vanished at that very instant. In addition, Hui Yuhao found himself unable to locate the person's position even with his spiritual detection. Could this be? Hui Yuhao was visibly startled by what he had just witnessed. Until now, Liao Menkai had not even unleashed his martial soul. Hence, his teleportation ability must have been granted to him by a soul tool. Could the human-shaped soul tool he is wearing now possess the ability to teleport? No, it can't be this simple. From the look of things, it's almost as if he completely vanished. It's not the same as teleportation. This means that his human-shaped soul tool must possess some sort of ability which is very similar to spatial power. That would be insane. While Hui Yuhao was trying to understand Liao Menkai's power, a figure had suddenly appeared behind him. The figure was wielding a black blade which was giving off a menacing black glow. Because Hui Yuhao had been enveloping the entire battlefield with his spiritual detection, he was able to react instantly. The icy war god's armor immediately emitted a layer of dark blue light. When that matte black blade glow came near the icy war god's armor, it was almost as if it had sunk into a marsh. It instantly stopped as an extremely cold aura immediately attacked the black figure. The effects of Hui Yuhao's ultimate ice were always present. Even though he had become a lot more conservative with it, and had not released his snowy dance of ultimate ice again, he was still able to unleash the power of ultimate ice on his opponent by just activating his intent. Without hesitating at all, the black light flickered, and Liao Menkai vanished again. In that short instant, Hui Yuhao's morning dew dagger was about to stab into Liao Menkai, but he vanished in the nick of time. This was exactly how assassins like to fight. After failing to land their blows, they would immediately retreat to prepare for their next blow. Of course, Hui Yuhao was able to instantly understand what Liao Menkai wanted to do. It appeared that Liao Menkai had the same plan as Zhongli Wu. Both of them wanted to expend his power. They wanted to use their various methods to burn his spiritual power and soul power. What a good move! Hui Yuhao revealed a cold smile. It might be very demanding for me to deal with Zhongli Wu. But do you really think it will be demanding for me to deal with you? A soul engineer who has not even reached rank 95? You might have a human-shaped soul tool, but I have one too. On top of that, there are some things I have which you do not possess. Hui Yuhao gradually raised the morning dew dagger in his hand until it rose above his head. The dark blue glow on the icy war god's armor suddenly weakened before it intensified and illuminated the area around him. After sensing this extremely intense cold, Liao Menkai, who had just reappeared next to Hui Yuhao, immediately went back into the void without any hesitation. Hui Yuhao slashed his morning dew dagger outwards. At that instant, no one could see exactly what he was doing. His entire body was like a dark blue ball of light, where countless streaks of light were radiating from his body. At that instant, everything within 1,000 meters of him was enveloped in a piercing blade light. The icy blue light ripped apart all space easily. This was obviously an indiscriminate attack. Even when he was up against Zhongli Wu, Hui Yuhao had not unleashed such an attack. What kind of technique is this? Fortunately, Ji Juechen was not present. If not, the sword fanatic would definitely bug Hui Yuhao to spar with him after this battle. He would not have cared even if he were to lose. After Hui Yuhao had unleashed this technique, the entire sky had changed color, and now revealed a radiant picture. It was as though a gigantic icy blue dragon was flying in the sky. Every single scale on the dragon's body was immensely clear. Is this something a sword technique is supposed to be able to achieve? Everyone from Tang sect was startled by what they had just witnessed. None of them knew when exactly Hui Yuhao had mastered this technique. After all, this technique did not belong to the Dolor continent. It was passed on to Hui Yuhao by a god. Rain Dragon's Dance. This was the first time Hui Yuhao was using this technique on the battlefield. At the instant he unleashed this technique, he felt as though the soul power stored within his yin-yang complement soul cores was being gulped down furiously by the morning dew dagger. The black figure was forced out from his hiding spot within the void as Liao Menkai frantically waved his blades before him to protect himself. Nonetheless, he could not help but sustain 13 cuts on his body. His Class 9 protective soul barrier was shattered. His invincible barrier was also shattered. One could also see the streaks of icy blue light that were left on his human-shaped soul tool. The piercing cold instantly penetrated his human-shaped soul tool and went straight into his bones. Even though his human-shaped soul tool was also Class 9, its defensive ability could not be compared to the frightening power of the morning dew dagger. The formation arrays within the Class 9 human-shaped soul tool were instantly destroyed by the blade light. If he had not been wearing an additional suit of Class 9 inner armor, he would have turned into an ice sculpture. It was frightening, simply too frightening. What kind of dagger technique could shred space over 2,000 meters? Hui Yuhao was somehow able to restrain himself, and only use it now. How many trump cards does he actually possess? The powerful soul engineers and soul masters from the Sun Moon Empire could not help but tremble as they watched Hui Yuhao unleash that technique. However, they did not know that he was also regretting what he had just done. Even though the Rain Dragon's Dance was able to startle everyone, it demanded too much from him. He realized how much soul power he had lost just because of that technique. Even the powerful regenerative ability of the yin-yang complement soul cores was not able to compensate for the soul power he had spent. It took almost 30 seconds before the sky started to lose its peculiar appearance after it was carved and torn into the shape of a dragon. Now, the sky had turned into a sea of ultimate ice. It was clear how much soul power Hui Yuhao had expended to achieve this feat. Die? A loud howl escaped from Liao Menkai's mouth. Following which, two long matte black blades were released in Hui Yuhao's direction. They sped towards him like lightning, while Liao Menkai started to drop towards the ground from the sky. Everyone knew there was only one reason why a person would toss out his or her weapon in the middle of a battle. This was because the person wanted to create an opportunity to escape. Even though a Class 9 Soul Engineer might not be able to match a top-class Soul Master when it came to fighting power, their ability to survive was definitely a lot stronger than that of a Soul Master. If it were a Soul Master with an equal or even higher cultivation than Liao Menkai who was on the receiving end of Hui Yuhao's Rain Dragon's dance, he or she would have already been shredded to pieces. However, Liao Menkai was still alive. Two matte black blades instantly appeared before Hui Yuhao one after another. The blades were staggered by a single meter. A serious look immediately formed on Hui Yuhao's face. In fact, from his first battle until now, he had not revealed an expression this serious. Hui Yuhao raised his morning dew dagger to deflect the first black blade. Following which, he did something which no one was unable to understand. He tilted his body slightly as he used his left shoulder to take on the attack of the second blade. TSKK. The long blade pierced through his shoulder instantly. Even the powerful defensive ability of the Icy War God's armor was unable to block the blade. However, Hui Yuhao's shoulder did not seem to be bleeding. He simply stumbled before he fell from the sky. Tang Wutong immediately panicked after seeing him fall. She was about to dash over to catch him when she saw him raise his right hand and signal her not to come over. Following which, two loud thuds could be heard. Liao Menkai and Hui Yuhao had crashed into the ground one after another. When Liao Menkai landed, his body fell forward in an unsightly manner before he rolled over into a sitting position. On the other hand, Hui Yuhao landed in an extremely steady manner. However, the blade in his shoulder made him look very frightening. Ha 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 ha. It seems like you were shot down by my blade. Liao Menkai let out a burst of laughter. He was obviously very pleased with himself for successfully harming Hui Yuhao, a feat which not even Zhongli Wu had managed to do. Hui Yuhao nodded at Liao Menkai. He said, I never expected to see someone like you who would dedicate your life to perfecting a single art. If I had not been watching you and sensing when you would release your martial soul, I would probably have been in a worse state. You were actually able to ignite your own life energy to freeze the flow of my internal energy. If I am not wrong, your martial soul should be a blade, right? Liao Menkai nodded. He was impressed by how Hui Yuhao was able to deduce all of this during the battle. That's right. My martial soul is a blade. To be more precise, it is a blade soul. My blade soul does not possess a true physical form. It is quite different from the usual weapon martial souls which you probably see. However, it is able to fuse into any metallic object perfectly. When I had just started to cultivate it, it was extremely weak and powerless. However, as I became stronger, I started to realize how powerful and useful it is. Hui Yuhao continued, even though your previous attack looked as though it was intended to prevent me from going after you, you had actually fused your martial soul into your second blade while you burned your life energy to restrict the flow of energy within my body. The first blade was meant to be a distraction, as you had simply thrown it over in a fairly normal fashion. It seemed like you must have consumed a lot of tonics and herbs to strengthen your life energy. Yes. In fact, I actually unleashed my 9th soul skill earlier. It is called Soul Splitting Blade. If I am to be honest, you are doomed. From the moment my blade entered your body, you were bound to die even if you were to chop off your limb. After all, my demonic god blade is a Class 9 soul tool. The other blade is a Class 9 soul tool. By using my soul-splitting blade to enhance my Class 9 soul tool, it is essentially indestructible. Even if you were an ultimate dolor, you would still die because your passageways would be severed by the destructive energy which will ravage your body. To be honest, I don't think I would have been able to freeze the flow of your internal energy if you had not fought so many people beforehand. After releasing that powerful technique of yours which exposed my location, you had expended too much power, and became vulnerable to my technique. Hui Yuhao nodded and said, I admit that I have underestimated you. This is the price I have to pay for doing that. However, I want to remind you not to overestimate the power of your blade soul. Even though it can hurt me, it will not be that easy to kill me. As he spoke, Hui Yuhao gripped the hilt of the demonic god blade with his right hand as he slowly pulled the 5-foot blade out from his shoulder. Right now, Tang Wutong no longer dared to watch Hui Yuhao. Her fists were clenched as she wished she was the one in his place. However, Hui Yuhao did not allow her to go over. After all, this battle against 10 opponents was a battle which was exclusively his. It was a man's battle. Liao Menkai was startled to see Hui Yuhao removing the blade from his shoulder. He did not expect him to possess the energy to remove the blade. What? This can't be happening. Why do you still have the strength? Shouldn't you have used all of your soul power to suppress my blade soul? Why do you still have the strength to remove the blade? Liao Menkai had already ignited his life energy and used every single ounce of energy in his soul power to launch an all-out attack. Even though his attack was successful, its effects fell short of his expectations. How could he still be able to remove the long blade? There was actually another reason why Liao Menkai was willing to go out and challenge Hui Yuhao today. He was, in fact, driven by his greed. He wanted Hui Yuhao's morning dew dagger. As a powerful fighter who possessed a blade soul, he believed that he ought to be able to control the morning dew dagger even if he did not possess an ultimate ice martial soul. He believed that he had a good chance of becoming a transcendent dueler if he were to couple his blade soul with the godly weapon. It was important to note that one could only become a Class 10 soul engineer after attaining the abilities of a transcendent dueler. This was something he had been dreaming of for a long time. Liao Menkai watched Hui Yuhao slowly remove the 5-foot blade without spilling a single drop of blood. However, because Hui Yuhao had a visor over his face, no one could see his expression. Nonetheless, everyone believed that he was not in that much pain, since he was able to extract the blade in a fairly steady manner. Finally, the entire demonic god blade was removed by Hui Yuhao. His body trembled a little as he held the Class 9 soul tool in his hand. The demonic god blade only had a single characteristic, its extreme sharpness. Similar to how Liao Menkai went after the extreme in his fighting style, it was the same for his weapon. It was so sharp that even the icy war god's armor was unable to block it. Powered by his blade soul, the attacking power which was unleashed by the demonic god blade at that instant was almost on par with that of a godly weapon. If Hui Yuhao had reacted slower and treated it as a normal attack, his heart would have been pierced by the demonic god blade. How were you able to do that? Liao Menkai asked Hui Yuhao in a dazed manner. Hui Yuhao wielded the demonic god blade in a reverse grip as he used the side of his palm to lift his visor. Even though his face appeared to be a little pale, Hui Yuhao revealed a calm and composed expression. I have kept you alive until now just so that I can show you how useless your attack is on me. You had no chance of killing me at all. Now, it's time for you to vanish from the surface of this earth. Please show mercy. Juzi exclaimed from her seat. However, this was the battlefield. There was no room for mercy in war. Boom! An intense explosion could be heard. Liao Menkai's body had exploded into pieces. Even till his last breath, his eyes were still widened in disbelief. Liao Menkai had ignited his life energy and given up on defending his body to launch his final attack. In fact, he had injected all his soul power into the weapon, and used his other soul tool to conceal the glow of his soul ring in order to unleash such a deadly blow. However, why was his enemy still alive? By banking everything on his final attack, it implied that he had completely given up on defending himself. However, the truth was that all of his passive defensive measures had already been shredded by the Rain Dragon's dance executed by Hui Yuhao's morning dew dagger. By the time Hui Yuhao's ultimate ice had permeated into Liao Menkai's body and he had fallen to the ground, he was already seriously injured. Most of the passageways in his body were already frozen solid. Under such circumstances, the ice explosion was definitely all that was required to deal the finishing blow. Hui Yuhao gradually turned around to face the Sun Moon Empire's army. He stabbed the 5-foot-long demonic god blade into the ground as he used it to support his body. Suddenly, he let out a serious cough as 2 streaks of blood shot out from his left shoulder like arrows. After leaving Hui Yuhao's body, these 2 streaks of blood formed the shape of a blade as they turned around to attack Hui Yuhao. A golden light immediately shone from Hui Yuhao's forehead and enveloped the bloody blade soul. Following which, the blade soul exploded silently before vanishing into thin air. The blood stopped flowing from Hui Yuhao's shoulder. It had only left some bloodstains on Hui Yuhao's icy war god's armor. He remained standing there as though nothing had happened. Next, the blood did not make him look vulnerable or weak. In fact, it made him look a lot more intimidating. The contrast of the blood against his pale, cold face made him look like a devil who had just descended onto their land. 6th. This was already the 6th person. Hui Yuhao was able to win all 6 battles with his superior abilities. He had killed 3, injured 2, and captured 1. If Juzi was not exactly very upset by the Holy Ghost Church's failure earlier, it pained her to see the Legion commander of the Terraclaw Soul Engineer Legion fall. After all, Liao Menkai was a Class 9 Soul Engineer. On top of that, he was the Legion commander of a Soul Engineer Legion. It usually took a couple of decades to nurture a talent like him. Every Class 9 Soul Engineer like Liao Menkai was a strategic resource of the Sun Moon Empire. Juzi was starting to understand why Hui Yuhao had suggested this challenge. He was not only trying to force the Sun Moon Empire into a retreat, but also trying to reduce the Sun Moon Empire's power while improving his own abilities. Even though Juzi could not control the Holy Ghost Church, the Holy Ghost Church was still on the side of the Sun Moon Empire. Under Hui Yuhao's ruthless attacks, the Holy Ghost Church had sustained huge losses. Now, they were starting to lose their Soul Engineers. Even though the Sun Moon Empire had quite a few Class 9 Soul Engineers, they were still very limited. They did not have more than 20 Class 9 Soul Engineers, even including those who were initiated in recent years. However, Hui Yuhao and his peers had already taken down more than 1. On top of that, it also pained Juzi to see Hui Yuhao injured. Right now, Hui Yuhao's breathing was slightly labored. It was evident that his injury was not light at all. Liao Menkai's final attack was something he really had not expected. It was the first time he had seen such a powerful all-out attack. Liao Menkai's attack was built on extreme sharpness. Hence, every single attribute which he possessed was developed with that consideration in mind. His invincibly sharp soul tool was greatly enhanced by his blade soul to an incredibly frightening extent. By the time Hui Yuhao was able to sense its insane power with his spiritual detection, he immediately knew that there was no chance he would be able to block that blade. Hence, he instantly used his ultimate ice to freeze and protect the passageways in his left shoulder to attempt to block it. At the end of the day, his icy war god's armor was still effective at defending him. It was able to negate about 50% of the blade soul's power. After the remaining power had entered his body, it had started to try to ravage his body in a furious manner. Just as Liao Menkai had predicted, it had tried to shred everything within his body to pieces. Fortunately, Hui Yuhao possessed his yin-yang complement soul cores. With the nourishment they provided, Hui Yuhao's body had gained strength that put it on par with Di Qian's. The soul power vortex in his body had played a big role in preventing Liao Menkai's energy from tearing his body apart. Hui Yuhao's soul power vortex was able to lock onto the blade soul before forcing it into a corner with its continuous rotation. This prevented the blade soul from hurting his vital organs. Nonetheless, he still fell to the ground because he had trouble controlling his body in that moment. Eventually, he managed to use his soul power to force the blade soul out of his body. In fact, the entire process was extremely risky. If he had not formed his yin-yang complement soul cores before this challenge, Liao Menkai's attack would have been fatal. He would have died instantly. However, Hui Yuhao did not emerge from this costly battle without any benefits. While he sustained a serious injury, he gained a better understanding of his yin-yang complement soul cores and their useful effects. However, the truth was that performing the Rain Dragon's dance with the Morning Dew dagger had been too demanding on Hui Yuhao's body. Now, he was left with less than 20% of his original soul power. Many of his bodily functions were also slightly damaged. Nonetheless, he continued to stand there as he stared down the people from the Sun Moon Empire with cold eyes. At the same time, Hu Yuhao was trying his best to activate his yin-yang complement soul cores to recover his soul power. He was definitely going to fight on no matter what. After all, he still had his invincible spiritual power and Hu Yuhao began to chant his incantations in a low and deep voice. Under the influence of his imitation and his spiritual interference domain, no one could hear his incantations nor sensed what he was doing. Juzi took a deep breath before letting it out. She was no longer able to make decisions as the commander of the three armies. The strength Hu Yuhao had demonstrated was extremely suffocating. How? What should I do next? The usually quick-witted Juzi found her mind completely blank. While she was not willing to see Hu Yuhao die, she knew that if the Sun Moon Empire were to lose this challenge, the entire army's morale would take a huge hit. Everything she had done prior to this would go down the drain. Let me do it. A loud exclamation rang out from beside her. Elder Su, who had been standing next to Juzi, strode out to face Hu Yuhao. Juzi opened her mouth and wanted to stop him. However, no words escaped her. Even though she did not want to put Hu Yuhao's life in danger, she knew that she could not allow the morale of the army to be shaken. As Elder Su slowly walked towards the center of the battlefield, the various soul tools he had brought with him started to appear. The people who were watching the battle could hear the crisp metallic sounds as Elder Su's human-shaped soul tool started to form on his body. As Hu Yuhao stared at Elder Su, the pupils in his eyes contracted. He was able to tell from today's battles that the Sun Moon Empire must have mastered the core technology used to build human-shaped soul tools. In addition, they must have developed a certain method to use these human-shaped soul tools. Xianzuan's research had shown that one needed significant spiritual power in order to exercise the precise control needed for a human-shaped soul tool to fit perfectly with one's body. It was important to note that the stronger the human-shaped soul tool was, the more spiritual power it consumed. Without superior spiritual power, it would be next to impossible to control a human-shaped soul tool like one's limbs. Hu Yuhao did not find it strange that these Class 9 soul engineers had their own human-shaped soul tools. He was more interested to find out how the other soul engineers within the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineer Legion were able to use human-shaped soul tools. They must have used some sort of special method in order to achieve that. You are very powerful. I am very impressed with what you have achieved at such a tender age. I must say you are the most gifted soul master I have ever seen in my life. Unfortunately, we serve different masters. Whatever strength and power you possess will only become a greater justification for us to kill you. I promise I will destroy you at all costs. Elder Su said solemnly. Hu Yuhao stared calmly at him and said, "Then let's begin." A huge black gate suddenly formed behind him, following which, a massive body emerged after releasing a deafening howl. It was none other than the Jiangshi Ice Bear King, Bai. Now that Hu Yuhao was facing his seventh opponent, he could not help but call for reinforcements. Hu Yuhao leapt upward before landing on Bai's shoulder. Following which, he sat cross-legged his shoulder as though he were glued there. Bai looked up into the sky before releasing another deafening howl as it started to stomp towards Elder Su. Elder Su revealed a condescending look. It was important to note that he was not a close combat soul engineer, but one who specialized in ranged attacks. Even though Bai was humongous and radiated an intensely powerful aura, it was nothing more than a clumsy target in Elder Su's eyes. Two red cannons appeared on the shoulder plates of his human-shaped soul tool. Those two cannons were not very big, but they instantly released two red soul rays towards Bai. When a soul engineer became a Class 9 soul engineer, the power of their soul tools could no longer be measured by their size. Because Bai was so big, it was an easy target even if Elder Su did not aim properly. However, an unexpected outcome formed before everyone's eyes. Just when the two rays were about to land on Bai charged forward, and suddenly angled his body in an agile manner. In fact, it even pushed itself off the ground with the tips of its feet to avoid the two rays. Elder Su's eyes widened in disbelief. After all, he had only launched his soul rays after he had locked his cannons onto Abai. How was it able to avoid the rays? Spiritual interference domain and spiritual detection sharing. That was the answer. It was Hui Yuhao's answer to the challenge Elder Su had given. While Elder Su was hesitating, Abai had gotten extremely close to him. It waved its humongous fist and planted it in Elder Su's direction. Its overwhelming aura caused the surrounding ground to sink even before its fist came into contact with it. Elder Su instantly retreated rapidly in a bid to evade Abai's attack as two streaks of light were released from the bottom of his feet. Abai looked up into the sky as it released another low growl. It opened its mouth as its white smoky breath surged out at Elder Su. A huge circular gem that was attached at the front of Elder Su's human-shaped soul tool suddenly emitted a powerful beam of light. The beam instantly went past the breath Abai had released and landed on Abai's body. Even with the help of Hui Yuhao's spiritual detection sharing, Abai was simply too big and too close to avoid this attack. Hence, it could only use its strong chest to take this blow. Because of the powerful speed his human-shaped soul tool had given him, Elder Su was able to instantly retreat and avoid Abai's breath after releasing his attack. This allowed him to widen the distance between him and Abai. However, he was shocked to see that Abai was able to shake off any effect the beam had on its body. Following which, it continued to charge towards Elder Su. How is this possible? That was a Class 8 gold-melting cannon. It was important to note that even a Class 9 soul engineer was not able to only possess Class 9 soul tools. This was because it was incredibly difficult to build Class 9 soul tools. On top of that, it often took too much time to build them. Tools like milk bottles were a lot less useful for soul engineers of higher classes. They simply did not have the time to replenish what they had expended. At the end of the day, one soul core was still the most reliable source of soul power. Hence, it was extremely logical to see powerful soul engineers equip themselves with soul tools of different classes. Even though the gold melting cannon was only a Class 8 soul tool, it was able to melt gold and any other similar metals. On top of that, it was focused on a single target. Hence, it was extremely powerful. However, it only left a faint black mark on the gigantic bear's body. It didn't seem like it had managed to cause much harm to Abai. At that end of the day, there was still a difference between Abai and Little Bai. Little Bai was a powerful controller of ice and snow. Even though Abai had inherited Little Bai's body, it did not inherit Little Bai's ability to control ice and snow. Or rather, Abai only possessed a tiny bit of control over snow and ice. However, Bai also had its very own advantage, its immensely tough body. After becoming a spectral creature within the spectral demiplane, its body was affected by the aura within it, and had mutated. It definitely possessed the strongest body within the entire spectral demiplane. If not, it would never have become the king of the entire spectral demiplane. Hence, it was extremely difficult for a Class 8 soul tool to harm Abai. On top of that, the gold-melting cannon was a fire-type soul tool. It was natural for its effect to be weaker on Abai, who was an ice-type spectral creature. Abai stomped its left foot on the ground as it sent tremors and vibrations across the earth around it. As the earth trembled, everyone, including the Sun Moon Empire troops who were about 5 kilometers away, found the ground beneath them shaking and vibrating. By borrowing the reactive force from its stomp, Abai leapt into the air before rolling itself into a ball. Following which, it flew towards Elder Su like a massive rotating cannonball. The aura it possessed was similar to that of an icy meteor falling from the sky. This was the only ice ability Little Bai had passed on to Abai. Even though its ultimate ice ability was lacking compared to Little Bai's, Abai's physical power was definitely more powerful than what Little Bai could achieve. After recovering from his momentary shock, Elder Su immediately regained the speed he had lost. To be honest, he was not in the least bit scared of Abai. After all, speed was his specialty. On top of that, his Class 9 human-shaped soul tool was able to prevent him from being locked on by his opponent. This meant that Abai would never be able to lock onto his position. With a single flicker, Elder Su was able to maneuver his body and avoid Abai's attack. At the same time, a matte black Class 9 soul cannon appeared on his shoulder. Since the Class 8 soul tool was not enough to take Abai down, Elder Su had decided to go with a Class 9 one. This time around, he also made sure to choose one which was not fire type. Attacking power had never been a problem for any Class 9 Soul Engineer. However, just when Elder Su had finally locked onto Bai's position and fully charged his Class 9 Soul Cannon, his spiritual C suddenly alerted him of an impending threat. This was an instinct which only titled duel possessed. Elder Su was extremely trusting of his senses. This was because they had saved his life countless times. Without hesitating, he immediately stopped charging the soul tool on his shoulder as he flipped around and revved up his human-shaped soul tool in a bid to escape from whatever that was coming for him. A blue light suddenly flickered in the sky as Elder Su's rapid flipping motion suddenly froze. Following which, his body suddenly released a huge blood mist. If one were to pay close attention to Elder Su, one would notice a single hole in his Class 9 protective soul barrier, invincible barrier, and human-shaped soul tool which all lined up. Even though the hole was not very big, it was sufficient for it to be fatal. This was because they had all appeared at Elder Su's head. Boom! Bai's massive body landed onto the ground. Following which, a figure gradually appeared on its shoulder. He was none other than Hui Yuhao. However, Hui Yuhao was no longer sitting down and meditating on its shoulder. He was now standing on Bai's shoulder. A streak of blue light made a parabolic path in the air before returning to his original position. Elder Su's dead body fell from the sky and landed heavily on the ground. There was no longer any reaction from him. It had ended. The 7th battle had ended just like this. Another Class 9 Soul Engineer had fallen. However, no one knew why and how Elder Su had fallen. Hui Yuhao's body was swaying from left to right, but he grabbed Bai's head and managed to steady himself. Following which, he sat back down on Bai's shoulder. This time, he did not push the Sun Moon Empire for their next representative like before. Instead, he quietly sat down cross-legged. Juzi's face had turned very pale. From the beginning until now, the gigantic ice bear had just been a decoy. It was a decoy that had attracted Elder Su's attention. Hui Yuhao was still the one who dealt the final blow. This video will end here.